Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, where every word matters. I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. After recent remarks by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, one thing is certain: people were advised that Germany is a no-troll feeding zone. The statement came after tech billionaire Elon Musk's sour comments and ad hominem attacks towards German politicians, including the Chancellor and the President, on Thursday. Musk is to host on X a live chat with Alice Weidel, AfD's Chancellor candidate, a move that might boost her stakes in the upcoming snap elections. The question is why Musk decided to get involved with EU politics, and how does this reflect the situation among member states, a number of which are dealing with seismic political shifts? To talk about the context and how could this affect the upcoming German elections, I'm joined by Maria Skóra, associate researcher at the Institut for Europäische Politik in Berlin. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we're looking at the European Commission that made an announcement. It will be looking into whether or not the online social media platform X is promoting its owners, speaking to, as I mentioned, far-right's AfD's Chancellor candidate Alice Weidel. Do you think that Social Democrats in Germany have a lot to worry about ahead of the upcoming election, considering Elon Musk's remarks and the upcoming live chat?
Well, I would say that overall the governing coalition has a lot to lose in these elections. As you know, and as our viewers probably know, on November 6th, straight after the US election, the German traffic light coalition collapsed and a snap election is approaching. So the question is perhaps not as much as Elon Musk is able to affect these elections, but what is the overall atmosphere in Germany?
So what is it?
Well, that's a good question. Germany has been, if in recent months, and if not in maybe even the last 2 years, in a state of political disaffection. These are political factors and economic factors that play into it. This traffic light coalition, the progressive coalition, was supposed to bring progress, supposed to bring hope after 16 years of Merkel, and it's lost its support in the society pretty quickly. So on the one hand, we see that the governing parties are losing support, and on the other side, and perhaps we should have started with this, the economic situation in Germany, it's a mix of cyclical and structural factors. It's not good. German economy is stagnating. There is sinking production. There is fiscal discipline that sometimes stops the investments. There are some disruptions between the German and Chinese trade relations, sinking demand from China. Mm-hmm. So overall, that has an impact on consumer moods, on consumer sentiments, and leads to a certain as I said, disaffection, dissatisfaction with the work of the politicians. And this gives rise to alternative political actors, for example, the Alternative für Deutschland.
So what are the possible scenarios as we're approaching the election in Germany and all those sentiments that you've mentioned? How do you think they're going to potentially shape what we're going to see after the election in February?
Yeah, right now, checking the polls is the Christian Democrats that are leading the polls, so the CDU, CSU, union parties, but the Alternative for Germany is just in the second place with 20%. Of the vote. I wonder, and I sort of doubt, if they could break this glass ceiling, but for sure the CDU will have a tough task whom to form a new coalition with, assuming that they will win with 30 to 35% of support. They've already excluded the Greens, so possibly the SPD, so the Social Democrats are a possible scenario. Maybe we're heading towards the next great coalition. But they cannot ignore the AfD, even if the firewall against working with the far-right, alt-right, as they're described, still persists. Well, this can be a constructive opposition or destructive opposition, and the latter would be my guess.
I would like to circle back to Elon Musk, because I know that this might be something that is quite high on the agenda. It's quite hot in the social media right now, especially that it puts a certain spotlight on Germany and on other countries in the European Union, especially for people who, for example, live in America and might have never been interested in internal politics of the European Union. Not to play devil's advocate, but let's play devil's advocate, shall we? Is there any credence to the points made by Elon Musk in his critique, I would say, of the German government and the political situation in the country?
Well, what he's been doing is endorsing the AfD both on Twitter, today known as X, and then he also placed this op-ed in Welt am Sonntag, which is one of the main newspapers in Germany, and he was hinting at the economic situation. And this op-ed met with immediate response of the main editor-in-chief of the Welt, who said, well, Musk does the right diagnosis, but his conclusions are completely wrong. So supporting the far-right or alt-right or anti-democratic actors, however one wants to name them, should not be the response to economic crisis, should not be a response to maybe even a crisis of mainstream politics. Why Musk is really interested in Germany?
That's why I wanted to ask you, because he particularly put his focus first on Germany.
Yes, and so he says that he has a stake in Germany because one of his Tesla manufacturing plants is based in Brandenburg. Exactly. So it's a big factory. If I'm not mistaken, 2,500 employees. And so he uses it as an excuse or as a entry point to at all talk about Germany. But it's actually interesting and paradoxical because this the establishment of this company, of this manufacturing plant, met with a lot of criticism, environmental criticism, but also political criticism, and also coming from the AfD, which he is now endorsing. So the AfD,
an interesting dynamic there.
Very interesting dynamic. The AfD was the local or regional AfD in Brandenburg was perhaps joining the local communities again, which were against building such a big manufacturer. There is a situation of scarcity of drinking water in Brandenburg, actually, so they were worried about the environmental effects. But most importantly, well, Musk is producing electric cars, e-mobility, and this touches upon the crown jewel of the German industry, the car industry. This is a direct rival to German car industry, which perhaps caught a little bit too late on this electromobility and is maybe not losing, but lagging behind the global race towards electric cars. So, yeah, it's a good question, coming back to your first point, how the support of Musk will actually play with the support for the AfD, whose voters are not necessarily convinced by climate action, which electromobility is trying to answer, whose voters might buy this economic nativism or economic protectionism against a foreign investment directly in competition with a car industry. And finally, AfD voters are not necessarily fans of the United States, so let's see how this plays. They're more equidistant in relationship with Russia and relationships with the US. So it might not necessarily play in favor of the AfD when it comes to appealing to their voters, but let's see how the conversation with Alice Weidel this Thursday goes on Twitter.
Considering all of those elements that we've just outlined, what was the response, the general response of different political factions in Germany to Elon Musk's words? Because as you mentioned before, there's a dynamic where there is a push and pull, a bit of a tug of war situation going on between Musk, the AfD, and the rest of the political society in Germany.
Yeah, so mainstream political parties, if you want to call them this way, the Greens, center-left, center-right liberals were quite united in their criticism of Musk trying to interfere, of Musk putting the transatlantic relations in danger, in Musk representing his interests and not the German interests, as he claims. Olaf Scholz decided to remain cool, and it's the most Olaf Scholz thing he can, I think, do, because he's known as...
We don't feed the trolls here.
Yes, he's known as this stoic technocrat, and he decided not to go into this exchange. It's also the question about the role of the media, and
a very important question.
And, yeah, and the environment, the journalistic environment, was very critical of giving Elon Musk a microphone or space to express his support for a radical party. But at the same time, the chief editor of Die Welt said that, well, we have freedom of speech, and in this space for public debate, we also have to allow polarizing radical voices and answer them and give a response, and with a journalistic commentary. So there is also this layer of into the whole situation. How does politics and the media live together? They probably were counting on some visibility and to stir a little bit the waters in Germany, but let's see if it doesn't backfire.
Last but not least, I wanted to ask your opinion on what do we learn about how the society, the general society, the court of public opinion that ends up in the voting polls actually consumes the social media and access to thereof. What do we learn from the situation regarding Musk's comments about the political situation in Europe?
And that's an excellent question, because regardless where we are, this situation transcends Germany. This is actually a situation or an issue where we can draw conclusions, also even for Poland. But first of all, I would say there are three dilemmas or challenges that one could look at resulting from the situation. The first thing is how wealthy individuals can interfere in politics without a democratic legitimization. After all, Musk was not voted or in the elections to partake in political decision-making, and he is advising Trump, talking to Trump, getting involved in...
Whispering in his ear.
Yeah, whispering in his ear, but also making comments about other parties and political actors in Europe. So he's not yet part of Trump administration. Perhaps he will become.
But he's a strong influence nonetheless, considering the support he's giving him ahead of the final vote.
And although capital has always influenced politics, I think for the first time it's influencing the wealthy individual is influencing politics so visibly, directly in your face in a way. The second thing is external interference or foreign interference in domestic policies, where the political alliance building between parties of similar ideological families begins and when it ends. And then last but not least, social media and digital platforms, which are affecting our lives increasingly, and also the perceptions of our lives. So how to manage this information, how to manage fake news.
How to consume it.
How to control them and how to consume it. How resilient are citizens to consume media in a informed way. So I guess there are conclusions we can all draw from this German event.
Thank you so very much, Maria Skóra, Associate Researcher at the Institut for Europäische Politik in Berlin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And so this would be all for now here on World Talks, but please do stay tuned as we have Salia Strzemska coming up with a news bulletin in about a moment.